Hi, everybody. So, going to talk quickly through the Act One of the Tempest for you, just so you have a little clarity on what's happening in the play. This is one of Shakespeare's later plays. It's a romance, which means it has to have a shipwreck and some sort of storm happen. It's not that it's more romantic, it just has more kind of high seas adventure. And that is what happens. We start the play with a tempest, a storm. That's why it's called the Tempest. And when the play begins, you have this loud noise, booming noise, sometimes lightning, sometimes thunder. And you have these mariners, people who are in charge of running the ship, trying to control the ship in the sea. They're carrying some precious cargo. They're carrying the King of Naples, the Duke of Milan, and the brother of the King of Naples, and the Prince of Naples. And they've just returned from the wedding of Claribel, the daughter of the King of Naples, to a prince in Tunis, which is on the northern coast of Africa. So they're traveling across the Mediterranean and they encounter this tempest. They're headed back to Naples in Italy, and the storm undoes them. And the play opens with the mariners trying to control the ship and desperately trying to, navigate their way out of this storm, but also trying to keep the noble people out of their hair and out of their way. Gonzalo, who is an important character, he's a counselor to the king. He was also a friend of Prospero, who we will meet soon. Doesn't think they're going to die on this ship because he thinks that the bosun, who is the sort of in charge, does not have a drowning look upon him. He looks like he's going to hang on land in the gallows. So he keeps praying that they'll be safe. They go below to pray, and the noble people, and to let the mariners do their job. You can see that it's getting more and more frantic. Mercy on us, we split, farewell my wife and children. And Antonio, who is the brother of the king's name is Alonso, says, Sebastian is the king's brother, and Antonio, who's the Duke of Milan, says, let's all sink with the king. And Sebastian, who's his brother, says, let's take leave of him. And this is the first inkling you get of the nature of this play, which, as much as it has to do with a storm and a tempest, also has to do with a lot of political backstabbing. And you see that when we meet Prospero and Miranda. Now, Prospero is a magician. He's in charge of this island. And Shakespeare does this amazing 180-degree turnaround to move us from being on the ship and worried about the ship sinking to now being on land and watching the ship go down. And Miranda, who's the daughter of Prospero, watches with him and is worried about the ship that she sees that's falling, and she wants him to intervene. And he says, listen, I'm not going to intervene. I trust me that everything will be fine. And he realizes, first of all, his daughter is a very empathic character. She says, I've suffered with those that I saw suffer, a brave vessel that had no doubt a noble creature in her. Just highlight that line, dashed all to pieces. And he says, listen, be collected, be no more amazement, tell your piteous heart there's no harm done today. And this is important, that there's this tension between them. And he realizes she doesn't really know who she is. And he has brought, essentially through his magic, this ship there to take revenge. And he has to unfold the plot to her about what has happened to her. So Prospero had been the Duke of Milan, he says, and she can't believe this. She doesn't know this. She came to the island when she was 3 years old, and she has no memory of this. And he he explains to her that he wasn't really interested in governing, in being the Duke of Milan, but instead he sort of let his brother run the government for him, and that allowed the brother to take power, overwhelm Prospero, and kick him out of his own seat as the Duke of Milan. His people loved him, so they didn't have him executed, and instead they put him and Miranda on what's called a bark, on just a boat, and sent them out into the ocean. Gonzalo is the one person who really helped them. I'll just show you here. And Miranda is horrified. She says, how did we not die? And he says, they hurried us aboard a bark, bore us some leagues to sea, and put us where they prepared a rotten carcass of a butt, like of a wine cask. Not rigged, nor tackle, sail, nor mast, the very rats instinctively have quit it. And then they send them off to die, essentially. He says, she saved him because he felt like he had to take care of her. And this noble Neapolitan from Naples, Gonzalo, out of his charity, gave them rich linen, stuffs, and necessaries, and gave him all of his books, which is important because out of his books, Prospero learns magic and becomes this incredibly powerful ruler on this new island. He has two people that you're going to meet in this second scene that he rules. One is Ariel, who is a spirit. We can talk a little bit about what that means exactly, but we learn that Ariel is the one who actually controls the Tempest and causes the fire and causes the lightning. And then he has, and he's rescued Ariel. She had been tormented by a witch who lived on the island named Sycorax. And Sycorax has died, but her son Caliban still resides on the island. And Prospero, though he says that he, has treated Caliban nicely by educating him, clearly has overwhelmed him and colonized him, and treats him also very badly, giving him all kinds of pains and having spirits chase after him. So basically, Prospero is kind of like an imperial, colonizer who comes to the island and takes over. And he has these two people who serve him in various ways. Caliban is one of the most interesting characters. He has beautiful language throughout the play. He explains the history of how he came there. He says, "This island's mine by Sycorax, my mother, which thou takest from me. When thou camest first, thou strokest me and made much of me. Wouldst give me water with berries in it, and teach me how to name the bigger light and how the less that burn by day and night. And then I loved thee, and showed thee all the qualities of the isle, the fresh springs, brine pits, barren place, and fertile. Cursed be I that did so. All the charms of Sycorax, his mother, toads, beetles, bats, light on you. For I am all the subjects that you have, which was first mine own king. And here you sty me in this hard rock, whilst you do keep me from the rest of the island." So there's tension there between them about who rules the island. And Caliban is frustrated, but he's kind of tortured by Prospero. We quickly move in this last part of the scene to Ferdinand, who is actually the prince of the king, the son of the king of Naples, and therefore the prince. And he's been put safely on the island, separate from everyone else. And Prospero, through Ariel, contrives to have Ferdinand actually meet his daughter, and thus begins their sort of falling in love. But we quickly understand that Prospero is going to be enacting a kind of revenge on these people who had taken his dukedom from him, whether he contrived to get them there by magic, or they just happen to be. He's certainly taking advantage of the situation. Um, so that's all I wanted to tell you a little bit about this first act, and we'll talk more when we meet at the Globe.